So indeed, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I could attend the previous paper, half of Agiri and the other one, and they were both very interesting and exciting. So today I will speak about birds as religious and political characters in the old Javanese Rāmāyaṇa and also in associated temple reliefs. First, it will be rather, textual, quite philological presentation, but first I would like to show some images. For instance, panels of the temple, the Shaiva temples of Loro Jongra in Prambanan, central Java. And this temple contains, several panels depicting scenes of the Rāmāyaṇa and ascetics, and other topics. And scholars have noted the presence also of birds, and art historians, in particular Cecilia Levin, actually noted these kind of interludes, this kind of in-between panels and silent episodes, we find birds. And according to her, this is actually a translation into visual idiom of a convention found in Indian, especially Sanskrit literature. For example, the Samasokti, and again, the accentuation of the rasa, and so of certain emotions, and certain, let's say, tones of the scenes. Another scholar, Marie-Louise Totten, actually regarded birds more like as actually allegorical figures, some kind of statement on socio-political issues of the day. And so to her, this release suggests a sophisticated local literary tradition, which might even predate the old Javanese Rāmāyaṇa, which she dates to the 10th century, but I and other people date to the 9th or early 10th century. So basically, she noticed also that the birds had a function beyond, let's say, the purely ornamental, and so as to express certain allegories. Okay, and I basically agree with this. And I would just like to show you just a few panels. And for these panels, I'm actually not sure that they are allegorical, but they certainly might have had a meaning, that we can no longer access. These are probably herons, and herons are important. I will talk about them, catching fishes, and probably there are some parrots on the top. Again, one of these panels, so many of them. And in these scenes, a scene of the Rāmāyaṇa, where I think the bird Jatayu is where Ravana abducts Sita, and there is a bird just on the top, lying on the top of the head of Ravana, the villain, the central character. And in this case, also we find birds. And the Borobudur also is known to have reliefs depicting birds. Some of them actually stylized, quite stylized, that remind me of those shown by Hélène in her presentation. Anyway, so I now move to the Rāmāyaṇa, which I think is a text related to the temple of Loro Jongra, so possibly related to the panels depicted there. And I choose sargas, or chapters 24 and 25, which I have already discussed in previous publications. In fact, I have started to work on this material since at least 2010, or probably 2008. I published a few papers. And the main interest, the point of interest of these chapters is the allegorical representation of ascetics or religious people in general, exponents of philosophical schools or religious currents, as animals, and especially birds. So really birds seem to be the majority of the animals mentioned there. And so just to give you an example of this, the identification that are made explicit in the chapter 25, unlike chapter 24, which is more like, let's say, general, if you wish, and it doesn't mention exactly which are the characters intended. So in the 25, 24, There is the book or system of Kumara and its followers. I will talk about that later, compared to the peacocks. Then there is the Alepakas and the Puyuh quails in 25. The followers of Jaimini. Jaimini was a sage connected to the Mimamsaka system of India. And then there is Tarka and the Ajivinishchaya, perhaps a reference to the Pramana Vinishchaya by a Buddhist text, medieval Buddhist text, pre-9th century. And so these systems are connected to animals, and you can see here that there are so many in Sarga 24 of these descriptions, and Sarga 25th contains verses that are, let's say, talk to or respond to verses in Sarga 24, and often in Sarga 25th make these allegories explicit so that you can identify the birds with human counterparts, many of which are still obscure anyway. Now, this is actually not unknown in Sanskrit literature, quite the contrary. So there is the well-known motif of the hermitage, and I have to add that these sargas are actually set, the 25th is set in a hermitage, and the 24th is set in in Lanka, let's say, the mythical Lanka, where peace has been restored. And the motif in Sanskrit literature is indeed the peaceful behavior of animals, which are considered enemies. For example, the lion and the sheep, or the lion and the birds, the water birds, and the fish. So because of the positive influence of the hermitage, or in the case of Lanka, the restoration of the ruler, the rightful ruler, all the animals live in peace. And we can find many examples of this, for example, in the Valmiki Sanskrit version of the Rāmāyaṇa, in Kalidasa's poems, the Kumara Sambhava, and also in epigraphy, for example, the descriptions of hermitages. Okay, so this is just a well-known motif which was translated, let's say, into Javanese idiom. And yes, I just quote a passage from the Harsha Charita, a prose text that also makes some of these allegories. For example, the parrots are, still in the Shakya Shastras, I think the Shakya series, or the Buddhas, and the Minas, they are like ascetics living in a monastery, etc. So let's go back to the Ramayana, and in Sarga 25, you can see that two birds are mentioned. One is the starling, and the other are parrots. Okay, so there's evidence in these chapters that the parrots are to be connected with Buddhists, especially those of the logical epistemological school, because here the text says that the green parrot is truly a logician, Tarka, and who is busy with categories, and so making a loud noise. And I think there is a tendency also in this literature to describe Buddhists as parrots, because they tend to repeat. I mean, according to the Hindu, they basically stole Hindu doctrines and repeated them, So there might be there is definitely an element of amusement in these verses. And these parrots are engaging in debate with the starlings, who are raising difficult questions, and they ascertain nishchayan, the certainty, vinishchaya of the scriptures. And these are all terms connected to logical epistemological currents of Indian philosophy. And then as the last line, there is this description of the animals standing side by side. Now, I would like to present this return to this stanza, actually two stanzas, 1.5, on the water birds, Jankun, Kuntul, etc., which you see are described as, let's say, deceiving fish, small fishes, or shrimps. And especially the last two lines about the baka, so the heron, are really proverbial because the heron is despised as, again, taking advantage of the unsuspecting small fishes. And this is really proverbial, not only in Java, but also in India. This stanza 25 goes back to the topic, mentioned in the stanza I just discussed, and depicts this let's say, amusing scene of this water bird that is actually pinched by the crabs. And this is nicely depicted in many ancient Javanese temples. For instance, on Candi Mendut, a Buddhist temple connected to Borobudur, and also in East Java. So much later, Candi Ngampel, this motif continued to be popular. You can see these water birds, and especially also in the first one, you can see the crab, which I am trying to find now, but my view is obstructed. Okay, the crab is just pinching the neck of the bird, and also in the other relief, the crab is just depicted below the head. And these reliefs have been already noted and described, for instance, by Marijke Klokke. And according to her, they convey again, they express an element of critique, possibly of allegory, directed towards religious or even political figures. And this is, by the way, a depiction of the common story found in the Indian fable narratives, like the Panchatantra and the story of the heron, fish, and the crab. All right. So this again goes back to an Indic parallel, but this definitely takes on, I think, a Javanese shape, also because probably the Javanese could read the references to actual, religious figures. And what is interesting is that in these three reliefs, the heron is depicted with the crab also, but is depicted with the turban on the head. And this turban, so-called turban, is the typical headdress of East Javanese ascetics. Okay, so this would have been immediately identifiable by the audience as a critique to a religious person. And in fact, in later texts from Bali, for instance, the Balinese Tantric the Mum, we find really a description of a Pedanda Baka, which as it is called, a false ascetic, a Shaiva ascetic, a Hindu holy man, which pretends to be so, but he just wants to actually, take advantage of other people. And this is even found in another Balinese text. You can see that the Panchapuspita that depicts one of these ascetics, which was pure on the outside, but very, actually, I think over, let's say, just pretending to be that, but not really. So this is also apparent in a late 19th century Javanese text, the Dharmagandhu, which actually connect Islam. It's a text which contains a critique to, let's say, legalistic Islam, and connects the heron, so as a false, priest coming to Java, and also making a play of words between Walikan, the heron, and the Wali, one of these, 9 saints, canonical Islamic saints who propagated Islam in Java. Now I will move again to the Ramayana and just present this episode of the peacock and the Dharapati. Now, the peacocks are very important in Javanese literature. There is a lot of symbology. They are connected in many things. And here you see that the peacock is this is a typical representation of a peacock dancing. So they are connected to dance, to a certain month of the year, to the excitement for the rains. They are also connected to Skanda and Kumara, as we will see. And so it's just dancing, and the flowers of this tree fall around. And I see this as a reference to an actual, a dance performed by female dancers in Java, even in modern Java. Okay, there is also the Dharapati, but I cannot really elaborate on that. What I would like to do is just briefly look at the corresponding, so to speak, stanza of Sarga 25th, which again makes apparent the identification of the peacocks with the followers of Kumara. Okay, so the teaching of Kumara, Aji-san Kumara. And this is so because Kumara is the son of Shiva, and his vahana, so his vehicle, was the peacock. And again, I think here we have a reference to certain, dances by the devotees to the South Indian god Skanda, Kumara, or Murugan. So Murugan is actually the South Indian indigenous god, which was more or less homologized to Skanda. And we can see that we find in this text and folklore of South India the trope of this very like wild dances, as in the old Javanese is conveyed by this agelem mangigel, so it's like continuously really dancing and wearing a tuft, makunchir. This is the tuft of the peacock, of course, but I also see a play of word because makunchir, kunchir, and is probably let's say it recalls Kurinchi, which are the mountains, the mountain ranges in South India, which are always connected with this type of dances and with certain with tribals, let's say, with savage people, followers, devoted to the god Murugan. I have to go quite quick because I have still a lot of material. I will not make it, but still I will present some. Now I have discussed another cluster of important stanzas of both Sargas 24 and 25 in two publications, especially one 2011. And here we find the, well, let's say these three birds. One is the jalak, probably the starling, then the puyu, the quail, which I've already mentioned, and the kuwon, which I identified very tentatively as the kokal, black kokal. And basically, you see they are quarreling, and so the starlings, yes, they are the servants of the gnosis, or the gnosis, Prajnojwala, etc. Ngalula ngalula ring Prajnojwala. So I don't quite understand. It is definitely some reference to some Indian philosophical stream, but I'm not sure about which one. Then there's the Prinyas, Prenjak Prenjak, which are eating with eagerness. The weaver bird, the hiji, plates a house looking at the quail beneath, the puyu. So here is a critique between, let's say, an industrious type of, bird who might represent an ascetic, living in a hut in a forest, as opposed to the puyu, which is very dirty and lives in holes on the ground. And I've argued that this puyu connected to the Alepakas is actually an early Shaiva type of ascetic, performing the bath in ashes, sleeping in ashes, and basically having a kind of, non-sedentary lifestyle. And the kuwon also is a very important figure in this text, and in this cluster of stanzas and in the sargas, because again, a few stanzas are devoted to it, and it is criticized usually, and in this case is living in a hall, or using a hall as a resident, maku kuwon. Okay, so what is the, so let's talk a little bit again about the kuwon and the metaphors, which are introduced here. So the aim of this kuwon is to kill, actually, and so he's accused of being by the starling of being not genuine about his disposition, which is, I think, Sambega in the old Javanese. But Sambega also means, as a technical meaning in Indian philosophy, that means a desire for emancipation, some kind of, religious wish that makes one undertake the ascetic career. And okay, it's called a tanda, and he had a very mean palace, Kanishta Akuta. Akuta is a fortress, and Giri has written an article about this, and I written a reply, and I think, the tanda now, thanks to Giri's work, is definitely known as a kind of, let's say, I don't know, like a military person at the service of the political elite of Java. Anyway, the Kuon is said to be homeless and unattached and leading the life of a vagabond performer. So Widuma Wayang, Lako Widuma Wayang. Wayang is a reference to wayang player, and also is called Gunya Saguna. Now I find this quite intriguing because it's kind of a redundant expression, Gunya and Saguna. Saguna would mean with good qualities, Guna, and Gunya the same. But I think probably here Gunya is a reference to some low status, religious practitioners, which in the tribal belt of India are called Gunya. They also means sorcerers, basically, the word. And still in Orissa, there are this Gunya. And Saguna, Guna can also mean in Old Javanese power, supernatural power, or even magic. The modern Indonesian word is guna, is black magic, So again, this kind of is in harmony with the description of this bird as having a kind of a low status and being involved in dubious activities. Now, this is a very complicated discussion, and I really think you don't have the time today. I just wanted to show you a few possibilities of these very dense stanzas. Maybe I can just very briefly tell you that again there is another bird called the Manuk Widu, which might be related to the Kuon, because the Kuon is called also a Widu, and this Widu is said to be not very clever. So he again practicing the art of play acting. Okay, and so I find references actually to the connection between this word vidwan, so being very clever, and the practice of dance, a certain category of Shaiva ascetic again. So it is full. These stanzas are clearly full of double entendre and allegories, which could only be understood by people who knew, who had the knowledge of this, very, let's say, sophisticated, metaphors and referring to Indian religious currents. Now, since I've already talked about this, but there is one final thing which I think it's important to show. So the last verse of the last stanza, so Bukti Bhakten alas gung makula kula kulit moles kulit. So basically, these are referring to, again, this bird going to the forest and taking female wives, so to say lesser wives, to practice asceticism together. And interestingly, in another part of the text, we find this lik elik, so it's an onomatopoetic expression, which reminds me of the ang alik alik found in the Sumana Santaka and East Javanese Kakawin, which again is connected to a female character, like in the Rāmāyaṇa, it was a female bird emitting that sound, which is called the woman of the Widu, and it's definitely, there is something going on here. I have discussed that, quite complicated, but I wanted to just show you another one, in which again the Kuon is described as inviting the female to go with him and become a wandering ascetic. And then, so the Kuon, the female Kuon, is said to have successfully attained liberation by following the path of the Kuon, so Makamarga Marga. And so this is a clear, explanation, I think, of the allegory in stanza 24. But what is this whole, for instance? What is this Makula Kula Kulit? All these words many of these words are actually not quite clear. But I think there could be a reference to the ascetic practice of living in a hollowed out tree. So basically in tree with holes inside. And this is something we already find in the Pali Canon. So an extremely early stage of Indian literature. In the Pali Canon actually criticized these monks, these ascetics, practicing what they call the Pishacha cults. So basically the worship of spirits, malignant spirits of the forest, etc. And we know a category of monks called Pamshu Kulika, which were active in the Abhayagiri Vihara of Sri Lanka, and which, by the way, these Abhayagiri Vihara monks are mentioned in an inscription from Ratu Boko of the 8th century, So there were links between this monastery in Sri Lanka and Central Java. And I wonder whether this makula kula kulit, so they wearing the let's say some rags, basically the bark of the tree, can be connected to this Pamshu kulika. And you know, there are definitely tantric sources describing again this practice of you know, attracting pishacha by means of asceticism performed in a tree hole. But this makula kula could also be connected to the concept of kulas, of families, of clans, of the transgressive tantric ascetics practitioners, which became, let's say, yeah, let's say, infamous in the medieval world, starting already from the 8th, 9th century. And so they go to the forest to perform these rituals, to be ascetics, because this kula was really centered on the erotic ritual. In order to accomplish supernatural powers, also the cult of the yoginis, of the spirits, including pishachas. So there seems to be something going on here, but I haven't, I mean, I still cannot exactly, you know, prove or point at what exactly had the poet in mind. Okay, I think my time is up. I wanted to show you some final stanzas, but I don't have time. Just to say that there is also the nice flying, you know, fox, which I think were considered birds in the mind of the authors, not mammals, and they are depicted in the text as well as on relief. So this ascetics actually doing this kind of, you know, tapas, ascetic practice, by hanging upside down on the branches of trees, just like the flying foxes. Okay, so that's all. This is also something that we find in India in very early texts. And then there were there was a part on the political references to, you know, a 9th century king of Java. But I don't have time. In any case, I hope to have given you an idea about the richness and all the meaning that was attached to birds in Central Java, already starting in the earliest example of all Javanese text, that is the Rāmāyaṇa. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. So time for some quick questions, right?
Indeed, that's kind of, yeah.
Okay, let's do that. So I think Jiri had a question.
Thank you for absolutely fascinating presentation, Andrea. I learned quite some new things. I have actually maybe 10 questions, but I will limit myself. Ragvara is also quite interesting topic. I will limit my questions to 2. First, I wonder if you can tell us more about this Valik, who's said to elik, this Valik bird is said to act in a kind of elik. Would you interpret elik as a kind of just simple laughter or just a kind of religious laughter? The topic now discussed in ancient Greek scholarship. It's quite a hot topic for these humor studies, if you can call it like that. That we now see that there is secular laughter, what we all know what is that, and there is this kind of threatening or, you know, approving or whatever you call it, religious laughter. That would be my first question. And my second question is Tarka, Buddhist philosophy, parrots related to Tarka philosophy. I find it really persuading, and it seems to me from my own consultation of passages where parrots appear in all Javanese literature, that these are really mostly passages embedded in one or other way in the Buddhist echelon, I would say. Even though, of course, it's not completely like that. You will clearly find many cases where parrots are connected with Hindu religion, to say the least. The Kama, they are the attributes of the god Kama, as anyone knows. But my question would be rather strange for one textual scholar as you are. Would you think, how you would interpret from the position of textual scholar these bird medallions, as you showed us, and they are also found on other temples like Chandikidal? What was their task? What was their what they were expected to do with the visitors, with religious pilgrims or whoever would visit the temple. Do you have some answer from the point of textual scholar? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the interesting points. As for the first, I guess so. Yes, I would tend to interpret that Elik as a kind of religious laughter, also because Javanese texts contain references to this attahasa that were indeed a practice of the Pashupatas, of these early Shaiva ascetics. I think in the Sumana Santaka passage there is also a laughter there that I connect with to the Rāmāyaṇa. So why not? Possibly, of course, I'm not sure, but I would say there is nothing that really say it's impossible. You know, it is possible. On the other hand, so the second question was the sorry, I remembered the third question about the reliefs. I'm not so sure. I as a textual scholar, indeed, I don't know. It could be some kind of purely, let's say, like in Kavya, you have these passages describing nature, the beauty of nature, animals. Maybe they are ornamental in that way. They provide some kind of, you know, interludes, some kind of, you know, episodes to divide, or maybe there is some deep religious meaning there too, like in these clearly allegorical reliefs that you find on Buddhist temple, on Shaiva temples. Maybe for the birds immediately will be connected to Hinduism, but again, what is the role in that context? This is something that really has to be investigated further. I'm sorry, the second question, just quickly remind me.
No, you've just answered both of my questions, in fact.
Okay, I thought there were three.
Regvarus, no, well, Regvarus.
The Tarka, yes, the Tarka, sorry.
Tarka
Yeah, the Tarka, I mean, you see Tarka is used in both Buddha Tarka, or even Tarka in Buddhist context, or in Hindu context, so Tarka, Nyaya, you see. So either of them could be. I should study more all the passages to you know, say with certainty if it is Buddhist or Hindu, but the Aji Vinishchaya, you know, that is very Buddhist. I mean, it's the Pramana Vinishchaya by Dharmakirti, I believe. So that really sounds like possibly a reference to Buddhist, but maybe they are Hindu, and those terms indeed are found in both, you know, Hindu and Buddhist texts.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Whoops. Hi, Andrea. Thank you so much. It was very reassuring. I knew how much you worked, but I didn't realize it was this much. And thanks for sharing also your ongoing research on this. It's really reassuring to chip in this realm of birds in a domain that's already been quite well studied from our point of view. Or maybe for you guys, it's still little, but I can tell you it's very reassuring. So I was wondering whether, you know, about this very clear agency of birds that you show with these textual examples. You know, there are birds who perform sorcery, dances, acting, asceticism, etc. I was wondering whether they are. I'm sorry if I didn't get that, but are they? How can I say? Are birds really agent of you know, actions? Do they really do they learn? Are they really considered learning from monks or ascetics or whatever teachers, or are they allegories only of these you know, ascetics and monks and actors that you were figures that you were mentioning? And I'm interested in this because these representations of birds in the sites that we're looking at that are also places of knowledge, right? That are also places of very, very probably asceticism or, you know, hermitages in some ways. Were now funerary sites, but that before being funerary sites were also places of knowledge. How much of these representation of birds, how much do they actually represent the people who were there, you know, teaching? Maybe. So my questions was a bit long, but my question is, are they just allegories, or were birds also, you know, truly agents truly practitioners.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. I mean, I can say that the birds definitely have agency, and they are the agents. There is no interaction between human and birds. You know, there are only birds representing religious people. I mean, ascetics, and there is also some learning going on. For example, the coot. I'm not sure about what is it. First of all, is it a bird? I'm so ignorant in this. You know, I no longer remember. I think if the coot is it's kind of aquatic bird. Just check indeed. So the coot is represented as an ascetic teaching, or rather, the birds are learning from the coot, and the allegory in Saga 25 is made explicit. They are the Pashupatas actually are learning from him. So the frogs are also there. So this is a Pashupata ascetic, teaching, and definitely also the baka, the heron, right, or it's a kind of religious teacher, and as we have seen in other documents. So that there is definitely, they are the ascetics, and they are sometimes the teachers, sometimes the students, and so I think it's quite clear that they are animal counterparts of humans, basically.
And only birds, right?
Not only, I mean, there are also other animals, but I would say 80%, 70% are birds. And then there are also like the cat is there, mice, some kind of small mammals, basically, but mainly is birds interacting with birds. I'm sorry?
Those representing hermits are not, you're saying they're not specifically...
all of them. I think all of them. I mean, also others, there is also this relief about the cat deceiving the mice, and the cat is represented on Chandi Mendut with the Akshamala, a trident, so it's Shaiva ascetics. And in the Ramayana also, there are other animals definitely representing ascetics. So it's mixed, I would say, but you may be right. I mean, maybe I have to look at maybe in a different optic. There might be a specific link with, let's say, religious or learning, or maybe some other aspect that birds play as opposed to other animals that maybe are there also because they need, the animals are always there, and but they didn't attach a very clear religious significance. So this is definitely possible.
But a good majority of animals representing hermits are birds. Would you be able to say to me?
I'm sorry, I didn't get it.
Would you confirm that the great majority of animals representing ascetics are birds, even if you have?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so just that you said that you need to leave soon. I had a kind of naive question, a quick question about these parrots. Right? So some of the ways that these parrots are described as ascetics is humorous, and I was wondering is there an element of satire there, or I mean, what is the tone with which maybe there are different nuances? But is there is there an element of humor or satire, or is it serious?
Yeah, it's definitely, there is definitely satire. Absolutely. I mean, it's quite clear that some scenes are really comical, even to our, for our, let's say, aesthetic, canons, and even more so perhaps in ancient Java. So this was precisely I think the aim, to criticize by the way of humor, as you could do in Indian satire too. You could target important people, ascetics, and kings via this type of satire, which is not direct. You are, describing animals, so nobody feels hurt, but people might have known. Those, intellectuals, say, would have understood these references. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we can think of other examples of this idea of using animals to criticize in Japan as well.
So I'm really sorry, but I have to leave.
Thank you, Andrea.
All the more so because this conference was so interesting. I'm so glad that at least I managed to attend 2 presentations, and I will do my best. We'll see if I can attend any other. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Contribution.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you. Bye.
Good.